there's a good chance that what you believe works best for your learning is not actually as effective as you think. That's because many times we just accept popular beliefs about effective learning and a skill practice, and we never actually question them. Today we're flipping the script on that, and we are going to explore some of the science behind successful learning and practice for mastering English fluency. By the time you're done watching or listening to this, you are going to have 10 very practical insights that will help you unlock your learning potential so that when you learn something new, whether that's a new vocabulary item, grammar point, or pronunciation pattern, it actually sticks in your memory and you can accelerate your progress towards your most fluent, confident, and capable self in English. Subscribe and hit like if you're watching this on YouTube. Hit follow if you're listening to this as a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other podcast platforms out there. Also, join the Heroic English movement. We are a supportive community designed to give you the tools and mindset that you need to thrive with your English speaking. Sign up at heroicenglish.com and you'll get all the next steps there. Now sit back, relax, and join us in this fun Heroic English conversation where we discuss all about how to increase your English skills by learning more, forgetting less, with some cool evidence-based strategies. Let's do this. Welcome everybody, welcome to this Heroic English meetup on learning. Wow, this is an important topic for sure, relevant for us learning English and trying to become more fluent in it. How is self-belief important for learning or improving a skill? Believing that you can actually get better in that skill or like speaking English. How important is self-belief?
For me, I think that self-belief it's so important for learning and of course for improving our skills because I can say from my experience, if you don't believe in yourself, you stop doing anything and you never achieve your goal.
What I think about self-belief is kind of like a cycle where if you lack self-belief, you're not going to take as much and as good quality of action that you would if you actually believed in yourself. Like when I tried to learn Portuguese, I didn't really have this belief that, okay, I will get to intermediate level even. So I wasn't even trying that hard. I wasn't even doing it that much, which leads to fewer results. Fewer results or bad results or not results at all lead to, it kind of like validates this belief that, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. Whereas if you have a strong self-belief, it's different and you take more action, you get more results, and you in turn get more self-belief. But sometimes it happens what you just described. You don't have the self-belief, but if you sustain the learning long enough, you will like start to kind of like stumble upon results, more and more results, and that it's going to kind of like change the course of your learning. It's happened exactly with going to the gym for me. And this is something that I already expect when I start the gym after a while. I know like the first week is going to be not going to feel that great, but my mentality for that is just continue going. Like don't miss a day. Don't skip one day. Just go to the gym the 5 working days of the week. And then it's going to like, you're going to turn that corner, I think. And you're going to start feeling the process. You're going to start feeling better. You're going to start feeling stronger. And that's when you're really off to the races, as they said, you know?
I think that more important is your motivation. Because if you really want to learn English, even if you have not good skills to learn, but every day, even one few minutes learning of English can really learn and achieve skills to communicate in English.
Yeah, I mean, motivation is very, very important for sure. But I see like motivation as something that's connected with self-belief, with believing that you can actually do it. Because if you don't believe that you can learn something, then motivation is not gonna be there, I think. Quick side note here to add a few comments about motivation. It is obviously a big deal. When you're motivated, you make progress in your English fluency. But when you are not motivated, when you are struggling with staying motivated, it usually is because one or a combination of four things. One, as I said, you do not believe in your ability to improve. Two, you are not excited enough to keep improving. Three, you are not practicing enough. You're missing this discipline around showing up consistently. And number four, it's not important enough for you, and because of that, you can't connect it with a deeper sense of purpose in your life. You can't connect that desire to learn with a vision of who you want to become in the future. There's this disconnect between your current actions and the reality that you are envisioning for yourself in the future. So it's a problem of purpose. It's a problem with answering why you are learning. So it's self-belief plus excitement plus practice plus purpose. So how are you doing with each of these elements? Which one needs a little more attention? Reflect on that and take action.
What do you think is the role of motivation, everybody? What's the relationship between motivation and self-belief? Is there any connection there, or can you see the connection?
Yeah, they are totally, I don't know.
It's like one leads to another.
It's like one leads to another.
Like I can't think of anything really that I've learned that I didn't have self-belief for. What do you think, Martin, about this?
Well, guys, I think self-belief is really important. If you want to achieve something, if you want to increase some skills, you have to think positive every day, and that will give you great motivation. You have to get up every day and think, today I will do it better. Today I will achieve another step. Every day you have to start with a positive mindset. That is really important.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. You have to have a good attitude for learning.
Martin here really nails it when he talks about the power of a positive mindset. Couldn't agree more with him on this one. If you caught the first video of the Heroic English podcast, you know that the positive mindset is one of 4 mindsets for English fluency, together with the growth mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset, and the challenge mindset. If you missed that first episode, or if you are wanting to go back and revisit those ideas, I'm going to put the link up on the right corner of the screen and also down in the description of this video. So go and check that out again, or for the first time. I think you're going to love it. Anyway, and now circling back to the importance of believing in yourself, in your ability to improve, to progress, to climb up a few levels in your fluency in English, I cannot emphasize self-belief enough. You need to operate from a self-identity that says, I'm the type of person who is on his or her way to speaking English as fluently and as confidently as I can possibly be. In other words, don't say, I wish I were as fluent as him or her. Instead say, I'm not there yet, but I will be eventually. And this is really powerful, because when you truly believe this, you will take action. You will put in the work, put in the effort. This will in turn bring results. And here's where the magic happens. This will reinforce your self-belief and your projection. This projection that, okay, I'm the type of person who is on his or her way to speaking English as fluently and as confidently as I can possibly do it. As you go through the revolutions of this cycle, you're going to start to love it, because you see the connection between your efforts and the results, which is a key ingredient of keeping motivation alive.
So we're gonna read something here. I'm gonna put it in the chat. It's not a lot. Well, it's just a paragraph. As a way to kind of like introduce the idea here, it's a reading passage from the book Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. Anyway, so people generally think about learning the wrong way. Research into how we learn and remember shows that much of what we take for gospel about how to learn turns out to be largely wasted effort. If you take something for gospel, means that you, okay, take that as the truth, like you don't even question it. Anyway, so that's take for gospel. Even college students whose main job is learning rely on study techniques that are far from optimal. At the same time, the field of research, which goes back 125 years but has been particularly fruitful in recent years, has yielded a body of insights that constitute a growing science of learning. Highly effective, evidence-based strategies that replace less effective but widely accepted practices that are rooted in theory, lore, which is kind of like urban stories, like false beliefs, let's say. But here's the catch. The most effective learning strategies are not intuitive, right? They're not intuitive. So a lot of things that we do to learn are not really effective, and they're not rooted in evidence, and they're not very effective. So we have two questions here to have fun in a breakout room. How do you usually learn new information? I know you guys discussed in your one-on-ones or small groups, and just wanted to bring everything together as a big group here right now. What are some of those ideas that came up and you shared?
Speaking with Alex, we are agree with the traditional way to study and learn, different words, phrases in English. Now with the TV series and all the options and all the content, it's very useful for us to learn in a different way.
That's actually what we want to talk about, like the next question, the next topic. And learning things in a passive way is absolutely essential. Does anyone, like when you watch a TV show, so you learn maybe something new in a passive way without really looking for it or like focusing or concentrating too much? Does anyone like take it another step and actually maybe write down the word on your vocabulary log or vocabulary notebook or something? Does anyone do something or like a step further?
Yes, I do. For example, right now I'm using Anki. I know a lot of people don't like it, or people say that it's boring. I personally think it is boring, but I think it is an effective way to memorize vocabulary, because you need to see the same word over and over in order to acquire that word or that expression and vocabulary.
Now, let me actually hit pause on that for a second, because I thought that what Alex said was really interesting. He describes his process for learning new vocabulary as quote unquote boring, and I think that's fascinating. Here's why. We're always eager to buy into this idea of learning English while having fun. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to make our English learning process as entertaining and as enjoyable as it can be. Now, with that said, you'd be surprised to discover how much you can actually endure boring learning activities that you know they can be effective when you truly embrace them and you start to engage with those learning activities. I'd even tell you that when you stick with that boring activity for long enough, you'll start to see some positive results, and you'll start to appreciate it as something that's actually not that boring. That actually happened to me, and I'll talk about just one example. I could mention many more. It happened to me when I had to learn the International Phonetic Alphabet, also known as IPA. So I wasn't really excited about learning this. I wasn't excited to learn IPA at all. Like, for me, were these weird symbols that I knew represented sounds in English and how words are pronounced, but I wasn't really excited about the idea of studying that and learning that. At the same time, I knew that I had to learn that if I wanted to pass some of the exams that were within the curriculum of my English teaching program in college. So I thought, boring or not, I have to embrace learning IPA, learning these symbols, whether I like it or not. I had to do it. So here's what I did. Every morning, immediately after waking up, before even getting off the bed, I spent 10 minutes looking at these IPA symbols and playing the sounds that correspond to each one of these symbols. And I was looking at examples and I was doing different things, but I was really focused on that just for 10 minutes right after waking up. And in the beginning, it was a bit tedious and, to your point, boring. But by day 3 of this process that lasted 2 weeks, 14 days, I was already kind of enjoying it. So when you connect your desire to master fluency in English with your vision of who you want to become in the future, you can appreciate that not everything needs to be learn English with songs and learn English with video games, learn English and always be entertained and stimulated. Not everything should be like that. And when you are serious about improving your English, your attitude is one of whatever it takes, I will improve. I'm not saying you should quit having fun and just do all the boring stuff. That's not a good idea either. What I'm saying is, don't be afraid to drop your smartphone and include 10, 20, even 30 minutes per week doing things that are considered a bit more boring, whether that's for learning something new, absorbing new information, or engaging in some kind of skill practice. And let me bring this point home with the following. We live in a world of such constant screen stimulation that boredom, especially if it's off screen, can be a real game changer in your English learning journey. Hashtag bring boredom back. I'm just saying, you'll be surprised at the results you get by embracing a few of these quote-unquote boring strategies for your learning. Let's continue with the heroic English conversation.
While I'm watching something, especially TV series or movie, I really like to add those expressions and vocabulary in my Yankee in order to memorize it. Yeah.
I never actually used Anki myself, but I believe in the technology that it uses, and which is based on the normal way, the human mind works.
Anki, it is application or it is the form how to learn or method how to learn the new vocabulary?
Good question.
It's an application.
Anki is an app, yeah. Uses spaced repetition is this concept that comes from psychology or learning, and Anki has built the technology around that so that, okay, you learn a new word today, like take for gospel. So you learn a new word today, but maybe 3 days from now you're gonna forget it, or maybe not really completely forget it, but you're gonna start in the process of forgetting it. So that's when the app knows how the human mind works, and so it's gonna do it like, okay, before you forget it, here's the word again. Look at it. Cool. Got it? Okay. Now that reinforced your memory of that. And maybe you're going to be able to like remember for 10 more days. So when this 10 more days happen, take place, like Anki's going to, hey, don't forget this, remember. And then you reinforce that. Maybe 3 months from now, I don't know how the timing works, Alex, but maybe 3 months from now, that process starts again of forgetting. So it's gonna like bring it up to you one more time. After that, yeah, it's pretty much kind of like burnt in your memory. You're not gonna forget it, I think.
But another strategy that it's not a strategy, it's more a habit, like reading, the habit of reading. You find sometimes the same word over and over.
Oh, exactly. That's a
you
great.
are able to remember those words, because sometimes you forget it. But in context, it's easier to remember those words. And by reading, you find the same word over and over, and then you are be able to memorize those ones.
And that's what I call kind of like the organic way to remember something, right? Because if you're constantly engaging with the language and living English rather than just learn it, then like an app like Anki can help you, but it's not essential, because I'm just coming across the word that I learned in a natural, organic way. Because, okay, I keep hearing it, I keep reading it in the books that I'm reading. So I've never actually used Anki, but just from the practice of living my English, constantly like being exposed to it and practicing it, that's how you reinforce the knowledge and the memory of the words that you learn, right? So we're going to talk about focused versus diffuse mode. I like to refer to this as active and passive learning. So we were just alluding to that with Dennis. What is focus mode? Focus mode is a concentrated and intentional way of learning where you engage with a specific topic or skill, right? Versus diffuse, which involves a relaxed and indirect approach to learning, allowing your mind to process information in the background. As like when we're watching a show in English, we're not really trying to learn all the words that are being said in that show, but at the same time, we are absorbing it. So it's more like a background process. The main intention of watching the show is just enjoy it, have fun, and get entertained. But as a byproduct, you're learning too. So focus mode requires full attention, right? Versus diffuse mode that happens when your mind is not actively focused on the task, often during breaks or rest periods. Even like if you're like going for a walk, maybe you're thinking about what you learned in a relaxed, not intense way, or maybe not even thinking about it, but your mind is still kind of like solidifying that knowledge, that piece of knowledge that you gained by doing something in focus mode. An example, like a real life application of focus mode, is studying a particular grammar rule, memorizing vocabulary, what we were talking about just now, and practicing a specific language skill, maybe pronunciation, reading aloud, something like that. And an example of diffuse mode, letting your mind wander, or taking a walk after studying, giving your brain the chance to make connections subconsciously, sleeping even. Some questions here to discuss, guys. We're going to go on some breakout rooms again. 3 questions. Feel free to just discuss one or maybe start with the third. Like, feel free to really dictate how you want to discuss and approach the conversation in that breakout room. Let's discuss this idea of active versus passive learning, focused versus diffuse mode. Think about how that is incorporated in your routine for learning English. Right now, for me, I do close to no focused learning. I don't do that anymore. I just learn by passively engaging and just, doing things. So that's a different, and it'll give you an interesting perspective, like when I discuss that in the breakout room that I joined. Perfect. But yeah, see you in a little bit.
Now, in my own learning, I've always given the balance between active learning and passive learning a lot of importance, because I think that when you get that right, it can be really powerful to help you accelerate learning and results. And there is active learning, passive learning, and practice time. So it's these 3 things that are absolutely essential when it comes to learning new information and consolidating that as skill for like speaking or listening or anything really. So let me actually break this down a little bit. Active learning or focused learning is that time when you are concentrated on something that you want to learn, new information you want to absorb, or maybe skills that you want to acquire. You're going to be in a focused, non-distracted state, and that's how you maximize your time for focused or active learning. Now, the problem with active learning, if we can even call it a problem, it's just in our nature to get tired and we can only focus on any given thing for so long. But the problem, again, is that it's fatiguing and it takes a lot of effort. It's this, you're in this state where it's intense. You're making this big effort to learn something or to get your head around a new grammar point, maybe, if that's what you are focusing on. The thing is, it takes effort. Effort is good because remember, learning is more meaningful and long-lasting when it's effortful. So embrace those moments of effort because that is a key part of the process. That's active learning. Now, again, as I said, active learning, you can only engage with it for so long because you're going to get fatigued. Now, passive learning is just the opposite. It's just about going through life, not doing anything other than just engaging with life, and that's all you need. One of the benefits is that you get yourself a break from those moments of high intensity focused work, and you just don't do anything other than just go through life and engage with it, provided you get English input. So you just be sure to watch movies in English, TV shows in English, play video games in English, listen to songs, listen to music in English, maybe be part of a community where English is the standard, is the spoken language. So maybe it does take some effort in the beginning to just set up certain things in your life so that you are sure to be getting input in English. Once you have that, you are going to be in a position where you can connect the dots between what you learn in your focused learning time, because maybe you learn something new, a new vocabulary item, and then you're going to see it being used in this other TV show, for example, and that's how you connect the dots, and what you learn there in that, say, vacuum of time studying or learning something, you connect it with real life. So passively learning is all about living your English. And then you also need practice. Practice is essential as well. So it's these three things: active learning, practice, and passive learning. As far as the ratios of dividing your available time between these three things, and this is what I mean by getting the balance right. So say that you spend 2 hours per week in focused learning. Then a good rule of thumb, in my opinion, is multiply that by 4, and that's how much practice you should be doing. So if you're doing 1 hour of focused learning, you should do 4 hours where you engage in skill practice, whether that's conversation, maybe practice speaking alone, or practice writing. Yeah, one of the active skills, writing or speaking. That's what I mean by practice. Practice is active as well. And then your passive time, your passive learning is everything else. Sleeping is also passive learning. It's just resting, which helps your neurons to make the new connections and consolidate what you're learning.
How do you typically approach focused learning when it comes to improving your skills? Do any one of you do any type of concentrated focused learning, active learning with English?
Yes, actually I do.
Mhm.
I find it more useful than like the background is another one, because when I'm not focused fully, especially when I try to learn something, maybe not new, but not the things that I don't master. So if I don't have this focused one, I think it's very useful, because I have to pay attention to understand something and repeat something.
Yeah, that's a great point, Agnieszka. The thing is, you can only keep a focused approach for a very limited period of time because it's very energy demanding. You can do that for 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but you can't do it like that for 8 hours. However, like
Yes, I noticed that, because sometimes even after like 10 minutes, I started thinking about something else and switch to something
fatiguing.
else.
It's fatiguing. It gets you tired. But then the advantage of diffuse mode is that there is no really limit to the time that you can use to engage with it, right? In a week, you're learning in a diffuse way for, I don't know, 30, 20, 30, 40 hours a week, pretty much your waking hours. So it's all about like that balance. And for me, it's important, obviously, the focused active learning. It is important and it has a place, and I think it's essential. And a lot of people talk about learning and mastering English without never really concentrating on anything, just, by, watching TV show and just hoping that enough is going to give you all the tools, all the different things you need to speak English fluently. I don't really believe in that, but, some people do.
So now I'd like to clarify something here, because earlier I said that I don't personally engage much in active or focused learning anymore. But I also just said that I don't believe that you can expect fast results and really even just get to higher levels of fluency if all you're doing is just passively learning the language. Not for most people in common circumstances of learning, like you're starting to learn the language as a teenager or adult and you don't have any previous experience or any real experience with the language. You're starting from zero, basically. So if that's the case, I don't really believe that only through passive learning you can achieve higher levels of fluency. And just, skip this whole notion that learning is more meaningful and long-lasting when it's effortful. I've seen a lot of people try to take many shortcuts and just avoid any sense of like, I have to study, or I have to learn this, I have to sit down and work hard in order to learn English and to master it and to hopefully one day become fluent. A lot of people want to just avoid any kind of hard work or heavy lifting that they have to do, and they're always choosing the easiest path. So let me explain why is it that I said that I don't engage in active learning anymore, but I believe that you should if you are still in the beginning stages or intermediate stages of your learning. Because if that's the case, you're at a stage where you still need to solidify and really strengthen many of the fundamentals of the language. Whereas when you get to a higher level of fluency, meaning B2, C1, or obviously C2, which are the highest levels according to the common European framework of reference, when you get to these higher levels, you achieve what I call escape velocity. And this is just a metaphor for when a spacecraft, let's say a rocket, takes off and leaves Earth, and it gets to a point where the Earth's gravitational pull is no longer acting on it, and now the rocket can just fly through space freely without being attracted by the gravity from Earth. Now, with your English, it's kind of like the same thing. When you're still at B1 or below, you still need to work on those fundamentals in order for you to get to a high enough level of mastery when you can no longer just depend on actively learning and studying and trying to memorize stuff. When you get to a B1 plus level, B2 or C1, ideally, that's a point where you can mostly rely on just passively learning English through TV, through audio, through reading and stuff like that. So again, from my experience, what I've noticed is that when you're in your early stages of learning, beginner and intermediate stage, you need to do focused and active learning. But when you go up a few levels, you achieve this escape velocity, and now you can at least not rely so heavily on active or focused learning, and just be confident that by being exposed to the language, meaning passively learning or absorbing new information, that's how you can continue learning and expanding your knowledge, provided that, you are getting constant English exposure through media, or in the best of cases, living in an English-speaking country, or at least working in an environment where English is the main spoken language. If that's your situation, you're almost guaranteed to improve your English, your language skills without really making an effort in trying to learn new things. Just be yourself, surround yourself with English and use it every day, and that is going to carry you to higher and better levels of fluency. That's what I feel it's happened with me. I spent a lot of time, let's say since 2010 until 2015 probably, mastering the fundamentals through active and focused learning. Whereas after that, after I started to work in places where English was the main or even the only language spoken, that alone guaranteed that I continued developing and learning and becoming more fluent. I'm not saying that if I had continued to work on my English in a focused way, I would probably be even more proficient than I am now. What I'm saying is that you no longer need to rely on it. So now in this last section of this video / podcast, I introduced 3 terms that are used in the context of learning and cognitive psychology. They are active retrieval, curveballs, and elaboration. Let me just share some other concepts, ideas, which is a lot of what we've discussing really. Active retrieval, curveballs, and elaboration. Does anyone know what a curveball is? Another vocabulary quiz. A curveball. It comes from the sport of baseball. And even though I don't know anything about baseball, I do know this idea. There's like the pitcher, the one who actually with the ball and throws the ball to the other player with the bat. And if I throw a ball to you that is straight, it's going to be relatively easy for you to hit the ball. However, if I throw a curveball, it's going to be harder. A curveball is you have to actually give it like a spin. The thing is, the ball is not going to be straight to you. It's going to be like the ball goes like this, and it's going to be really hard for you to hit it. So the idea of curveballs when it comes to your learning, we're going to read that in a second. First, active retrieval is a learning strategy
where you actively recall information from memory rather than simply reviewing it. It involves self-quizzing, summarizing, or teaching the material to reinforce learning. Like, have you ever, wanted to master some piece of information by reading something, and all you kept doing is, highlighting something in a text, then reading it again and again and again, which is it's easy to do. It doesn't require much effort. What's effortful is maybe, reading that, putting the book away, and then trying to remember what did you just read. And it feels like heavy lifting. It feels like, oh, this is hard. It's not impossible. You can do it if you think hard enough, but it's uncomfortable, right? It's like remembering something, like making an effort to remember something is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, but that's where the most valuable learning happens when you do that. Think about like how we actually practice actively retrieving something we know, but it takes some effort to actually remember that, to actually use it. How does that happen in our routine of using English, right? How do we actually do that active retrieval in our day-to-day English use? If I'm trying to say something, I don't remember the word, like, and you see me go, what's the word? Which I actually have done it a few times now, just now, this goal. That's actually healthy, because once you actually remember it, then the next time you need to use that, it's going to be easier for you to access that. You've moved that from your passive vocabulary more towards your active vocabulary just by making that effort. It doesn't mean that it's going to live there in your active vocabulary forever. Eventually, if you're not using it, it's going to go back to your passive vocabulary. That's okay.
For example, during this session, I couldn't remember for the words when you would like to make the shot from the screen, snips or something this.
Screenshot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you want to cut picture or something.
Screenshot.
Screenshot. But the tool means snips, as the scissors, something this.
To snip it. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't recall during the session this word, so I am trying to recall what is the word. And now, I will know it because I talk with you about it.
Yeah,
so maybe next time I will remember it.
Yeah, even right now is next time, because you used the word snip to explain the process of remembering it, and you didn't have to work hard to remember the word snip again, because you just did that hard work a couple minutes ago. And maybe like if we reconnect a week from now and you need to use the word again, it may be the case that you still need to work hard to remember it, but maybe not. Maybe it's closer to being a part of your active vocabulary, which is the ideal state of, like, for words to live in that part of your brain that's active. It has a limit too, right? There's only so much that we can hold in our active memory. But as far as the passive, it's just endless, and it's...
Yeah, this is the difficult, because usually we have the passive vocabulary is that huge. We know a lot of words, but how to make it active them?
Thanks, love it. Let's do the other one. All right, so curveballs refer to unexpected challenges or variations in the learning process. They can be obstacles that require adapting and problem solving, contributing to a more dynamic and resilient learning experience.
Now, curveballs are anything that add a variable to what you are expecting. If you've learned English mainly by being exposed to, say, the American accent, a curveball would be to all of a sudden be watching a movie or a TV show where the English spoken is from Britain, or even a much more specific, because Britain is very broad, right? British English, is very broad. But say like a very specific accent from Great Britain, like a great TV show for that would be Peaky Blinders, which I'm told is a show where they speak with really weird British accents, and even like a mix of different British accents. This would be a curveball because you're used to the American accent, and all of a sudden you're challenged to understand and try to keep up with this show where the English spoken is vastly different from the American accent. Yeah, you can help yourself with subtitles, but still this is going to present something new, something novel, and this variable, something that you're not used to.
And And conversation is the ultimate for me again, like curveball after curveball, because you're just immersed in a conversation. I could ask you a question that you're not expecting, and then you're going to have to use the words that are necessary to answer that question. So that's like the beauty of conversations. Yeah. Any ideas want to share?
I can share only my experience with curveballs because usually I have the topic in English with speaking is an abstract topic. Yeah, the mindset, how you learn English. But the last time with my English teacher, we switched to a scientific topic about the Earth, how it rotated around the sun, why we have the seasons in our Earth, and he challenged me to explain it, and I was and now to need to find all vocabulary, all the systems, and it was the challenge because I need to switch from one vocabulary to another source of vocabulary, but I haven't used it from my primary school. So it was sometimes it's very good to be punched with the English conversation topic.
Great example. And lastly, we've got elaboration. And I think Martin was talking about it earlier today. Like when you learn a new word, then he would think of sentences where he could use that word. Elaboration involves expanding on new information by connecting it to existing knowledge or explaining it in your own words. This process deepens understanding and enhances long-term retention. Like when we do conversation, we use our words in our own unique way, of course, correctly using the meaning of those words in ways that make sense. But we use it to talk about our lives and what's happening, and that is actually owning the meaning of that word, right? Next time you use the word like, don't take that for gospel. You're elaborating because you're using it on your own unique way, not in a way that is controlled, but in a way that is free, in a way that is you're using it to convey your own meaning, to express the meaning that you want to do, right?
I just would like to add the importance of expose ourselves to different contexts that we can find the same word. Exactly. If we expose ourselves to different contexts, we can see the same vocabulary, the same word, but being used in a different way. I think that helps us as well to retrieve the word or the expression, vocabulary.
All right, English Hero, I hope that you enjoyed this episode where we discuss some tips for helping you learn more, retain information longer, and actually acquire it and make it yours. So let's now really quickly recap a bit of what we've discussed in this episode of the Heroic English Podcast. We began by discussing the role that social media plays in learning. Then we talked about how self-belief is crucial for learning. We also considered the elements that make up motivation, that's excitement, practice, purpose, and the one I just mentioned, self-belief. So these four elements make up this idea, this feeling of being motivated. Then I made a case for how embracing boredom in learning can be a complete game changer, especially in this world of hyper stimulation with screens and with all this noise. Boredom can be the key to unlock your most fluent and confident and capable self in English. #bring boredom back. Then we discussed active and passive learning. I mentioned how it's important to include learning in a focused or active way and also learning in a passive way by getting as much input in English as possible. Then there also needs to be some time for practice. I said that a good number to shoot for would be 4 hours of practice time, skill practice per week. If you can achieve that, 4 hours of practice time per week, that's a great place to be. Of course, the more you can practice, the better. We also talked about how spaced repetition works. And lastly, we discussed 3 terms from cognitive psychology as presented in the book Make It Stick that is active retrieval, how making an effort in trying to remember something is beneficial for your learning. Then we also discussed curveballs, which basically is adding unexpected variables when you practice, and elaboration, which is taking what you learn and connecting it with something that's true for you, taking the information and actually using it in a way that's personal and you're actually using it in a real life situation. So if you found value today, subscribe and give this video a like if you're watching it on YouTube. And if you're listening, give us a 5-star rating on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Deezer, or wherever you're listening. Your support means a ton. All right, English hero, keep learning, keep growing, keep living your English, and until next time.